Hello, my name is Jevin Lumberg, and today I'll be giving you a presentation on research misconduct. The title of the article that I used for demonstrating research misconduct was titled Chief Researcher at National Japanese Institute Has Paper Retracted for Faking Data. This was found on the Retraction Watch website. The author that had his article retracted was named Hiroshi Asakura, and when he was working on this article, he held the position of Chief Researcher at the National Institute of Health Science Japan and also the divisional head. He previously held a position at the postdoctoral fellowship at Max Planck Institute for Infection Biology in Berlin. He worked primarily on the ecology and evolution of Campylobacter, which his retracted study focused on thermophilic Campylobacter within chicken at the site of slaughtering. He had worked on previous papers that dealt with Campylobacter, but his study looked at a potentially new way of detecting their presence. Okay, so his paper was titled Development and Evaluation of Fluorescent Immunochromatography for Rapid and Sensitive Detection of Thermophilic Campylobacter. The overall purpose of his experiment was to develop a new technique involving the fluorescent immunochromatography strips that would allow for a quick and sensitive detection of the bacteria on the poultry. He understood that this disease was prevalent in the small intestines of poultry animals and recognized a need for a more efficient way of detecting bacterial presence in order to prevent further contamination. His results that were expressed in the article confirmed his hypothesis that the strips would be able to identify the presence of the Campylobacter in poultry samples and be sensitive enough to detect the low concentrations of the bacteria in the chicken. Okay, so on the table, on the right side of the table shows what bacteria they looked at for within the different chicken samples and what they tested for, which showed the strips that were testing for Campylobacter genus were really effective at detecting them, but no other genus was as effective. Unfortunately, this data cannot be used anymore due to his faked and manipulated scientific data. When the investigators began going over the data, they found that samples described in the paper did not match the samples. And the results reported didn't match the original data. They found that they fabricated and forged some test materials and documents, meaning that the explanation used to explain his data was also false. This was specifically identified by the researchers in the paper where he was working with an ISO IEC 17025, which is a formal standardized lab certification system. When he faked the data, he undermines the public trust in the experiments that used the so-called foolproof system because he was able to forge. The investigators claimed that this methodological error occurred due to gross negligence of the duty of care. These errors did end up leading towards his paper being retracted. The consequences was he faced versus the consequences he would have faced had he been in a different country like the U.S. They differ. In the U.S., the public would be made aware of the misconduct of the retraction. The institute or the scientists, or potentially even both, would be banned from receiving federal funding. The author would have to go under a period of supervised research, often 3 to 10 years, and in extreme circumstances forced into resigning. These consequences have been seen in other retracted U.S. cases, but in Japan, where the study is taking place, they're a lot more private with the disciplinary actions. There would still be the public retraction of the article, but most other consequences are dealt within the institution itself, and consequences would be handed out in a more private manner. All of the same consequences could still be occurring, but there were no public records of his consequences for his actions that I could find. This is his first offense of any kind, which would lead me to believe that the discipline would be more gentle or less severe. The only thing worth noting is that he has not published anything since 2022, and his article retraction took place in 2023. His LinkedIn profile still shows that he works as a chief researcher at his institution, so the consequences truly remain a mystery. However, just because his consequences were never publicly recorded, it doesn't mean that he did not leave a mark on his coworkers, his institution, or the scientific community. Any co-author that is attached to his retracted article is subject to the same reputational damage by association, which may cause their other work to be questioned or re-examined. For his institution, a national one, no less. They lost a lot of public trust and credibility This also could damage the ability for them to receive future funding opportunities, not just in this department, but other departments as well, without a stronger oversight or internal investigations to reform policies that would prevent this malpractice from occurring again. Within the scientific community, this hits especially hard. With every retraction that occurs, the scientific record becomes more and more corrupt. It also wastes time and resources when scientists look to replicate the findings from the retracted study, or build on results that have no foundation, since the data is false. Science relies on trust and reproducibility, both of which experience severe damage. Because the public has now created mistrust, this could lead to poor food safety standards and public health guidelines, and even increased health risks for the public, all of which could have been avoided had the author and the institution taken responsibility and checked over the data and methods section for conducting the experiment prior to publication. And these are my references. Thank you so much for watching.